I'd like to call to order the December meeting of the Kernersville Planning Board. Before we start on our agenda, I'd like to ask Jeff to kind of give everybody an update of how the meeting will be run tonight.
Yeah, so tonight agenda is just a workshop for the planning board. And so that is the only agenda item, just a workshop. Staff will give a short presentation. Planning board will have discussion. There'll be no action. The rezoning case is associated with the public hearing has been closed. The planning board, you're now just gathering additional information. You'll take action at your January planning board meeting.
Okay, thank you. First thing I'd like to do is take a roll call vote or a roll call. Margaret Burks.
Here.
Diane Byers.
Here.
Tom McDaniels.
Here.
Nathan Mayer.
Here.
Chris Oakman.
Here.
Jim Frattenberg.
Here.
Joe Ornstein.
Here.
Steve Hutchins. Steve not present. And Lou Ann Davis.
Here.
Okay, thank you. First item on our agenda is the approval of the minutes for the October 12th, 2020 planning board meeting. What's the pleasure of the board?
I move for the approval as presented.
Okay, we have a motion for approval
I'll second it.
and a second. Any further discussion by the board? Okay, Margaret Burks,
Yes.
Diane Byers,
Yes.
Tom McDaniel,
Yes.
Nathan Mayer,
Yes.
Chris Oakman,
Yes.
Jim Frattenberg,
Yes.
Joe Ornstein,
Yes.
Lou Ann Davis,
Yes.
and Jim Waddell is a yes also. Second item is the approval of the minutes for the October 14th Planning Board continued meeting. What's the pleasure of the board?
I move for the approval.
Okay, we have a motion for approval and a second by Tom McDaniel. Any further discussion? Okay, Margaret Burks,
Yes.
Diane Byers,
Yes.
Tom McDaniel,
Yes.
Chris Oakman,
Yes.
Nathan Meyer,
Yes.
Jim Frattenberg,
Yes.
Joe Ornstein,
Yes.
Lou Ann Davis,
Yes.
and Jim Waddell is a yes, so that's approved. Thank you. Next item on the agenda is the planning board workshop meeting for a review of the North Main Street land use planning. Jeff? Jeff, we can't hear you.
The
There you go.
purpose of the paper that was sent out to the planning board and posted on the website, and this during the planning board's deliberation of the rezoning case K784, which proposed a grocery store at the new intersection of North Main Street and Mesa Grove Road. The planning board delayed action on the rezoning case until they could study the current land use plan. So this is a short presentation based upon that paper I wrote on the land use plan. The land use plan, the commercial areas, one of the primary land use plan elements within the land use plan calls for commercial pockets versus commercial strips. The plan states the land use plan concentrates commercial development to numerous pockets versus creating large generic strips. The creation of these pockets allow commercial areas to be more in scale with a small town atmosphere. And the clusters also lessen traffic congestion by dispersing traffic and providing convenience to residents. There are 8 distinct commercial pockets. Of course, downtown is the traditional commercial area of the town of Kernersville. South Main Street is our regional commercial center, basically serving eastern Forsyth and Western Guilford as a regional shopping center. North Main Street, basically from downtown out to Grayland area. The NC 66 Business 40 interchange area. The I-40 Union Cross interchange area. The western half being City of Winston, the eastern half town of Kernersville. And one of the newer ones, the NC 66 Old Salem Road Metro Activity Center. This is kind of your future downtown of the south, and also your major office growth. And then there's a small commercial pocket at Shields and 66, and also Medical Parkway in NC 66. Then there's neighborhood scale commercial centers, along with 8 commercial pockets. The land use plan calls for neighborhood scale commercial centers. The neighborhood scale commercial centers have been established around existing crossroad commercial areas, which include Tally Crossing, the Olympic area, the intersection of Bodenhammer and West Mountain Street across the street from the 4th of July Park, and a little one up Dobson Street where Old Valley School Road is. There's some little LB area up there, limited business. Piney Grove and Linville Springs. The Grayland Street, north of the Grayland Street area where the Sheets is, and between that and the Macy Grove interchange. Beeson Crossroads, and future Killed Creek will have a small neighborhood commercial area. Now the North Main Street, Macy Grove Road, County Line Road commercial neighborhood node. 2000, this is the newest one. In 2017, the town of Kernersville completed a study and plan for that area that would be impacted by the Macy Grove extension from Salem Crossing, Business 40 to North Main Street. Based upon the results of that study, the land use plan was amended, adding an additional commercial neighborhood with the following specific land use description. The description states, amend the land use plan for the parcel along North Main Street, north of Smith Edwards Road to County Line, from low density residential to commercial neighborhood. The commercial neighborhood shall consist of small scale commercial services with the maximum retail store size being 20,000 square feet or less, and offices. The commercial neighborhood development shall meet the current zoning objective for the approved neighborhood commercial development in the northeast corner of North Main Street County Line Road to create a village setting with buildings fronting the primary streets and meeting essential Kernersville overlay districts along with a network of sidewalks. The one thing we discussed after the last public hearing was regarding that one condition that states the maximum retail store size of 20,000 square feet or less is directly related to the implementation of a primary purpose of the town's land use plan, which is to provide orderly growth. The land use plan description for commercial specifically says, existing commercial areas need to be protected to prevent blight, but also to have property owners and investors understand and trust that their investment will be protected. This type of trust can stimulate a greater amount of investment than haphazard commercial development. The full land use plan description for commercial includes commercial uses include retail and consumer services. The growth of commercial is directly related to population growth. As the population increases, demand for commercial increases. Commercial uses prefer to locate adjacent to each other in an attempt to capture a portion of the consumer business generated from other commercial uses. Commercial development trends in this country have been a transition from downtown to plazas on the edge of downtown to shopping centers on the outskirts of a community. That leapfrog development pattern can cause older commercial areas to decline. Kernersville will undertake specific actions to address negative impacts of establishing new commercial areas promoting existing areas. To prevent the decline in downtown, Kernersville will continue to invest in downtown parking, sidewalks, and public facilities. South Main Street vacancies need to be reduced prior to commercial rezoning of other properties that would compete with South Main Street regional commercial area. And additionally, North Main Street and commercial areas around NC 66 Business 40 currently have numerous commercial lots that are not developed and several vacancies in existing plazas. These need to be reduced prior to commercial zoning of other properties. Existing commercial areas need to be protected to prevent blight, but also have property owners and investors understand and trust that their investment will be protected. This type of trust can stimulate a greater amount of investment than haphazard commercial development. So the land use plan specifically described these commercial areas along with a kind of a history of what can happen if you do not follow your land use plan. And we have specific goals and objectives laid out as just described. So staff summary, as described above and within the land use plan, the town's land plan emphasizes orderly commercial development to protect existing commercial areas, preventing blight and provide convenience to residents. For the town of Kernersville, following this land use plan, it has been able to build trust with existing property owners and investors, encourage additional investments. As the North Main Street commercial description states, previous land use plans had the entire length of North Main Street designated as a commercial strip. This idea has now been reduced from redevelopment of existing commercial properties in the area. And so that commercial area along North Main Street was actually reduced back in 2000 to concentrate around the Lowe's, Food Line, Rite Aid, Walgreens area. The land use plan specifically says Kernersville undertakes specific actions to address negative impacts of establishing new commercial areas and promoting existing areas. The designated North Main Street commercial pocket plays an important commercial role in the town of Kernersville as it serves as a commercial center for north central and northeastern portion of Kernersville. The North Main Street commercial pocket provides 2 grocery store sites that act as anchors to help attract other businesses and investors. The grocery store sites also provide convenient shopping to residential areas of Kernersville. If you're relocating a grocery store anchor out to the edge of Kernersville, sporadic or leapfrog development will result. This will encourage a shift of commercial cluster developments outside of Kernersville core and promote the decline of the older commercial areas. For those who are online can see the site is on the edge of, proposed site is on the edge of Kernersville. There's a 3-mile ring. So basically the proposed grocery store would push the grocery store to the edge of Kernersville, serving less residents in Kernersville. One of the goals is to prevent such leapfrogging and haphazard movement of the commercial areas out to the edges. The town's land use plan is one of its primary economic development tools. During the writing of the land use plan commercial sections, one of the things that community recognizes, Kernersville has fairly fixed city limits. Smart growth and development decisions made now will be crucial for the future commercial footprint of the town. The protection and enhancement of the existing commercial areas became one of the key components. Commercial investors and developers like predictability in the commercial market. A good example is the Southside Square Shopping Center, the old Kmart. The town was able to attract a commercial developer to redevelop the blighted old Kmart site to a Target shopping center. The developer recognized the town placed barriers of entry into the market, which addressed investors' concerns of another developer rezoning a greenfield, a site with little or no improvements, basically on your edge of the community, rather than taking a site within the existing buildings and infrastructure and redeveloping it. In the study I submitted, one of the exhibits has a specific letter from that developer who redeveloped that old Kmart center into a Target center. Approving a grocery store on the edge of Kernersville with the risk of adversely impacting the existing North Main Street commercial area would be a drastic departure from the town of Kernersville land use plan and hamper its ability to promote the redevelopment of the existing North Main Street commercial area. The town's commitment to implementing a land use plan gives confidence to developers, encourage investment in the town of Kernersville. So that's just a summary of the study that was sent to the planning board and posted on our website and on the agenda.
Jeff, just a few questions. And I know it's a delicate balance, but as we go through the land use plan, we keep talking about the developers and investors, those kinds of things. How do we balance that to the needs of the citizens that are living in the area?
Well, typically they match each other. The commercial developer wants to be near the residents, and the residents want that convenient location. In this case, by moving it to the edge, you're actually serving less Kernersville residents. Now, Oak Ridge would be better served by this site, but would be serving less in Kernersville itself.
Oh, my video just went crazy.
Yeah, we still have you in audio, Jim.
Yeah. And my second question, I guess, is where are these two grocery store sites?
The two grocery store sites currently on North Main Street would be your current Food Lion and your former Lowe's grocery store at Piney Grove.
So there are no additional ones north of that?
No, those two are the anchors of our existing North Main Street commercial area.
Okay. Any other questions from the staff? From the board?
I guess just a quick question. I agree with everything here, and I like what's written and our land use plan and the way that we, the town worked really hard to build this out a few years ago. My only concern is that this particular developer might choose another location that is just outside of Kernersville limits along North Main Street to satisfy the need in that area, which would then still cause the same problem that this land use plan is trying to prevent, I guess. That would be my concern. And Jeff, I don't know if you have any insight there, if they, I don't have any other insight than just if I was a developer developing a new grocery store to serve that side of town, which the residents that live just outside of Kernersville limits have been asking for years. And now with the new Macy Grove interchange or the Macy Grove Road, it makes it easier to develop future, developments and that kind of stuff on that side of town. That's my only concern.
Yeah, your next commercial area on North Main Street would be Oak Ridge. So be in between the Macy Grove intersection with North Main Street. As you go north, it's pretty much all residential, and the Forsyth County land use plan that we work closely with, the City County Planning Board, I would not see anything between this site and the Oak Ridge. And so you got to remember that the main consumer for this grocery store would be the denser population within the city limits of Kernersville. The only other grocery store site that I'd see on North Main Street is right across from Sheetz, that old industrial area.
Mm-hmm.
And, so that, we may someday, if let's say this grocery store wasn't approved, we may see that site as a potential redevelopment for a grocery store. So that's the only other larger site. And of course, redevelopment of the Lowe's site someday. Or
even redevelopment of the existing. You've got an empty movie theater now because apparently they've closed. There's luckily a church went into the bowling alley, but that doesn't help our tax base much. But
the grocery store, they typically want to be seen from the major corridor. So that site would be a little deep for a grocery store where the movie theater is. So that's why most likely across the sheets would be another redevelopment site for a grocery store. And one of the things on North Main Street is it's very difficult to expand sewer north of Kernersville. And so you're never going to really have the density to cause a large commercial demand, because as explained in the land use plan, residential growth causes commercial growth. We're seeing residential growth north of town and Forsyth in the rural area, but still the density doesn't create the commercial pressure. One developer once told me, "I don't have a very glamorous job. I just follow sewer around."
Yeah.
I mean, sewer really is the key to density. The density is the key to commercial pockets.
Yes, this is Luann. Have you talked to this developer at all? Or are they not interested in doing anything to revitalize anything on North Main to put their grocery store somewhere that's empty or not up to code or not as pretty as a new place would be?
No, I mean, the first conversation I had with the current developers, at that time they placed in their option and said they were coming in for rezoning. And at that time I forwarded them a copy of our land use plan explaining it was not conforming.
Jeff, I know last month when we had the case, we were talking about the size of the grocery stores, and that it was hard to get a grocery store in 20,000 square feet or under. In these, is there any leeway of increasing that?
I mean, the staff specifically did the 20,000 square feet recommendation, so it would not be a grocery store.
So we don't want any grocery stores further out than Food Line?
Correct, or the only other site, as discussed tonight, you might see in the future someday across some sheets on North Main Street. Yeah, but it's specifically written so we would not jeopardize potential redevelopment of our existing North Main Street corridor. I mean, once again, we just didn't want to encourage any leapfrogging of our commercial center out to the edge of the city, leaving behind an old commercial center that has very little viability or attraction towards investors.
Jeff, can I ask a question, please?
Go ahead.
This is Ian. So we discussed this a little bit before, but I want to ask again. I did know that Walgreens was paying the rent for the Rite Aid building, which keeps it from being utilized by somebody else coming in there. Is that same thing going on with that Lowe's building?
Yes, and they're both are good examples. When somebody moves out, it doesn't mean it's currently available. I think the important thing to remember is reflect back at South Main Street around 2000, before Target came and Walmart came. Walmart came in like 98. So if you remember, South Main Street had a lot of vacancies. There was a lot of vacancies. It didn't have the vibrancy. We did our land use plan to try to promote South Main Street as a regional center. We actually did marketing studies. We worked with developers. Walmart came. Some people were concerned Walmart was going to hurt local businesses. And, but before Walmart came, that old hardware store even closed on South Main Street. So when Walmart came, it kind of created some synergy without distracting from existing businesses. And then the story I told in the study is, and specifically letters from the developer, we were able to attract a developer out of Kentucky for the old Kmart. And remember, even when Target came in, there was a lot of vacancies. But over time, it slowly corrects itself. But it doesn't happen overnight. So like the Rite Aid and Lowe's, something will eventually happen there. But if we want something of a major investment, we have to continue the synergy of South Main Street. South Main synergy actually carried over. And I think one of the last places we're working now on, I think we're going to see changes, especially after the pandemic, is the Aldi shopping center. That was one of the last dilapidated properties. And of course, that was by a developer owned that who did not invest in it. So I think we've been very successful on South Main Street to be patient over the last almost 23, 24 years. And I think the town has to be patient with North Main Street commercial area to allow that, because things don't happen overnight.
Yeah, but if somebody's paying rent to keep a building empty on purpose, and that's happening in both places, is that correct? Who's in the Rite Aid?
My understanding, the Rite Aid one should be up anytime, and the Lowe's may be up in, I'm just speculating. I remember when Lowe's, how long has Lowe's at South Main Street been there? 3 years?
Yeah, probably.
But what I heard 3 years ago is Lowe's had like maybe a 6 or 7 year lease still on that. So, but once again, we're in it for the long run. 7 years for a community like Kernersville that's been here since 1800s. It's a very short period. Like I said, once again, I reiterate, the South Main Street took a long time, but there's been, in the 23 years, there's probably been 40 requests to extend commercial down South Main Street past Lowe's Home Improvement all the way to Hastings Hill. And Forsyth County planners and the town of Kernersville planners have pointed out our land use plans. We want to push it back into the South Main Street. The city of Winston and Forsyth County, they want to push commercial on South Main Street turns into Kernersville Road. They want to push that commercial and redevelopment to the new Sedge Garden interchange in the Beltway. So South Main Street is an excellent example of two communities working together, forcing the commercial back into existing pockets for redevelopment. And staff hopes to do the same thing with North Main Street.
Any other questions or comments or observations from the board?
What's to keep Lowe's or Walgreens from renewing that lease? Can they do that?
That wouldn't be I've never seen it as a business model. But for instance, the drugstore industry right now, on the Rite Aid stuff, pretty much there's only two drugstores left, CVS and Walgreens. And they try to stay away from each other now. So they each have their own in the town. You're not seeing a lot of new drugstore changes. But I've never seen that as a business model for a drugstore or a grocery store to re-up and keep something vacant. Because pretty much, after like Lowe's on South Main Street, they pretty much have their clientele. I think Oak Ridge has a Lowe's. So they have their Lowe's in Oak Ridge now and their Lowe's on South Main Street. So, Lowe's is comfortable. If somebody came on the North Main Street site, would take away some customers. But the key there, once again, is with our residential growth, it keeps everybody happy. They need a certain amount of consumers. And South Main Street service area has seen a growing consumer base, especially south of town that is served by that area.
Jeff, this is just an observation, and I understand where it came from through the 2020, and I agree with the way most people feel when they hear it. But how do the developers feel when we keep talking about a small town atmosphere? Does that affect them in any way, or are they looking for a larger area, or what?
They're more, the small town atmosphere is the rationale on that is the commercial clusters, which the commercial developers love. They love those commercial clusters because it protects their investment. And also they like the Kernersville overlay districts that call for a unique high quality community within a triad because it assures them that there's a higher quality that protects their investment. Lawrence Pope once told me he didn't mind the overlay districts because it protected his back or protected his investments. Lawrence, strived to do quality development. He wanted everybody else to. And so most of these commercial developers are doing commercial development that are built to quality of aesthetics because that's what attracts consumers. And they feel more comfortable with towns like Kernersville with that unique high quality community within a triad type of goal and overlay districts that protect that.
Okay, any other discussion from the board?
Yeah, I have another question.
Sure, go ahead.
So you said that you have the 20,000 square foot that is in place to try to keep a grocery store from coming in that area, but yet you were discussing that industrial building near Sheets. So can a grocery store go into a building that's already existing that's over 20,000 square feet?
What site the redevelopment of what site?
You mentioned that somebody could go into that industrial building across from Sheets.
Oh, that industrial site across from Sheets, anybody who redevelops that would tear down all the buildings.
But could a grocery store then go there and be over 20,000 square feet? Or is that still going to be in place?
Currently, the land use plan calls for that to be industrial, but that's something we would look at separately, just like we're looking at this rezoning case. But to answer your question, I mean, if the town was considering a new grocery store site, staff would definitely recommend a redevelopment of an old industrial site, like across from Sheets, than going out to a greenfield, or greenfield being an undeveloped area in the edge of town. That old industrial site, one, could be cleaned up, and two, it would better serve the consumers of the town of Kernersville because it's closer in to the Kernersville consumers.
That's a huge site too. I didn't realize that just the buildings is not a very big site, and somebody else owns the vacant lot next to it. But I didn't realize it was that large.
That's owned by the Ballard family. The Ballard family owns several industrial sites. It's anticipated a couple of years from now, some of that stuff will be on the market. It just hasn't been on the market.
What about the site a little further up from Sheets on the corner of Clay Flint that's been vacant? It looked like they were going to continue to build that strip mall or strip office space, but then they stopped a long time ago.
Yeah, that site next to where the DMV is and so forth, that remaining parcels there are too small for a grocery store. Okay. Most likely you'll see that was the zoning on that was two-phase commercial, limited business. So someday we'll probably see some expansion. Glenn Hart, local resident developer, owns shops there and also that vacant land. We've had a couple of people look at that, but it most likely would just be continued shop space, restaurants.
Yeah.
Okay. Any other discussion by the board? Okay, thank you very much. That's a good discussion. And we'll bring up the case, as Jeff said in the January meeting, if we want to make any changes to the land use plan, and then also whether we want to approve or disapprove the case that brought all this up. Do we have any public comments? Anybody waiting online that wish to address the board on the subject?
Matthias, anybody call in?
There's no one calling in right now.
Okay. Okay, the next item on our agenda then is board comments. Before we get into that, there's one issue we want to talk about. We've had the last several meetings start at 6 p.m. Is everybody okay with that, or do you want to go back to 7? Or wait till we meet together again in the board chambers and go to 7?
Stay at 6.
Okay, there's one vote for 6.
I like the 6.
Okay, I'll tell you what, let me do a board roll call, and just say 6 or 7 or whatever time you'd like to see the board start. Margaret Burks, you said
6.
Diane Byers,
I like 6. Yes.
Tom McDaniel,
6.
Chris Oakman,
6.
Jim Fredberg,
6.
Joe Ornstein,
6.
Lou Ann Davis,
6 p.m.
Nathan Meyer.
I'll be different. I'll go 7.
And I kind of like 6 too. So for the time being, there's your feedback, Jeff.
Okay, thank you.
And we may, again, when we get back to, whenever we get back to meeting together, June, July, August, whenever that is, we can always reevaluate when we want to start. So, okay, planning board comments. Margaret, you have anything?
I have nothing.
Okay, Diane Byers.
I think just discussing what we've talked about tonight, I feel torn over this developer wanting to develop out there, because I would love to see another grocery store on that side of town. But again, if he's just going to take the existing food line and move it out there, then you're going to have another vacant building left. And who's to say that the food line wouldn't pay rent to keep somebody out of that building? So I'm really torn on this whole thing, and looking at the land use plan, that certainly does not conform with it. But again, I'm really torn because I feel like people want to see something new out this way. And I just don't know that I feel very frustrated that people are paying rent on buildings to leave them vacant on purpose.
Okay. Let me caution the board a little bit. There has been no public knowledge or statement that it is food line going out there. So be very careful in using that in your judgment about the case itself. Because we don't know technically we don't know that it is a food line. Tom McDaniel?
I'm good.
Okay. Chris?
Yeah, I've got a couple things. I've seen a couple new buildings go up around town, and I don't know if they were like previously approved or something like that. There's a new building going up on Vernon Street, I believe it is, that I saw going up. It's been going up for a few weeks now. I didn't know if that was approved, and then I'm not quite sure what Brewer's Kettle did and if that was approved by just because of their location, or if that was something else. I don't know how those get approved without coming before the planning board and that kind of stuff.
The Vernon Street, I'm not familiar with that one. I'm trying to think of.
It looks like the same building a very similar building to what's there now. I think that's where I see it, across from the post office.
Oh, okay, Vernon Street, the car repair shops there across the post office.
No, well, yeah, they did a big addition too. No, there's like a 2-story.
Yes. Oh yeah, I know what you're talking about. Yeah, right across from the post office, the car repair shop took an existing building and raised it up so they could make it into car repair. And so they raised it up, use hardy board, and they conformed to the overlays. The other one on Vernon, that's actually a fellowship hall for the Baptist church. So there's that little Baptist church, and so that's a kind of a fellowship hall addition.
Oh, yeah, I see that they own it. Okay.
Yeah, typically, your fellowship hall is adjacent to, but when you're in a downtown area, it's not uncommon for your fellowship halls to be across minor streets.
Yeah.
The Brewer's Kettle, that's currently under review. There were some permitting and application situations that we're currently looking at. The current facade on that building does not conform to our standards, and so we're currently looking at how to remedy that.
Okay. All right, I was just curious.
Okay, Nathan?
Yes, I am very appreciative of the meeting tonight. I'm very glad that Jeff and other people that work for the town directly are trying to keep us from having urban sprawl. Because you go so many places around where the town didn't care and they didn't have zoning and they didn't have planning, and you see where you have the blights, just like Jeff was talking about. I really hope we never ever get that in Kernersville. So thank you, Jeff, for working to keep us contained so we do not have blight areas.
And one thing, just a side note on that, the Onward Kernersville visioning process, some of you are participating on. One of the visions coming out of that is to continue to promote the redevelopment, of our, especially some of our residential areas in the older part of our town through code enforcement and so forth. And so, coming out of that visioning is that, how do we keep some of our areas of town from going into that blighted condition, because once it goes into that blighted condition, it's really hard to get it out. And so I'm very pleased. Some of the draft visioning coming out is going to come out and say we need to help redevelop and protect existing areas, including residential.
Okay. Jim?
I don't have anything.
Okay. Joe?
Nothing here. Thank you.
Okay. And Luann?
No, sir, I'm good. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much. Staff updates, Jeff?
Yeah, I don't recall at the last planning board meeting if we announced Rochelle Joseph resigned.
No, I don't think we did.
The timing of it, so she accepted a job in Fort Worth, Texas. They had some family movement and stuff, and so we're very pleased with her new job in Fort Worth, Texas. She starts next Thursday. We're in the process of hiring right now. We're actually starting some interviews tomorrow. We have some good candidates, so it'll be hard to replace Rochelle. Rochelle is extremely competent and connected in the community, and so she'll be hard to replace. We also have another position that was frozen during the beginning of the pandemic that we're advertising for. We did some little adjustments. It'll be a new planner position. In the past, it was a project kind of coordinator, but we're kind of moving it towards project coordination in the planning and engineering division, but also kind of moving towards some planning roles, knowing that we're going to have to implement the new vision coming out of Outward Kernersville. So we hope to hire the community manager position first, because that person will be overseeing the planner position. So we have some good candidates also for the planner position. That's just kind of an update on staffing. For the January planning board meeting, we'll have the rezoning case up in North Main Street. We'll have a final development plan in Caleb's Creek for residential development. And then we'll have 4 or 5 text amendments associated with 160D. And they're separate staff reports, but I think what staff will recommend that we'll present all of them at the same time, and you guys can make your recommendation on all of them associated with 160D. 160D is the state statute that controls how it controls local governments doing their planning and growth management regulations. And so they're all tied together. And so staff will probably recommend you can just expedite things that help the public understand they're all tied together. We kind of carry them all together, even though they're separate staff reports. And then there's another text amendment on RM18. RM18 is interesting, currently does not allow for townhouses, but all other multifamily districts do. And we have some small RM18 districts that have potential to be redeveloped in our older areas of town with townhouses versus RM18, which is up to 18 units per acre. So staff is looking at text amendment on that. So those are the January agenda items. And of course, you'll be getting your packet, of course, that Thursday before the Monday, if not earlier. Our goal during the pandemic is try to get our reports out as early as possible. Of course, there's Christmas. But we do have we have quite a few of the staff reports already written, but we'll try to get them out early, but it is the holiday season. So we'll definitely get them out to Thursday before the Monday planning board meeting.
Okay. Thank you, Jeff. Anything else to be brought before the board? Okay, if not, then I'll declare that we're adjourned.
Thank you, everyone.